But time now to welcome my special guest to take the floor. Well-respected pianist and accompanist Gordon Cree. Gordon has played for many of our top artists over the years, including Moira Anderson and Peter Morrison. So, Gordon, welcome to Take the Floor.
Hello.
And you joined Wayne tonight for a couple of numbers. Outstanding. Was it something you enjoyed?
Oh, very much so, yes. I was very pleased when Wayne asked me, especially when it's two such interesting numbers. I've done so many Take the Floors with other accordionists and singers, and it's very straightforward, just what you expect, the Scottish things, which I enjoy very much too, of course. But it was nice when he suggested that we get together and do a couple of slightly unusual things. So I enjoyed that very much. It was a wee bit different.
It was contrasting styles, contrasting choices, but was that Wayne's choice or your choice?
No, it was Wayne's idea. He phoned me up and said, I've been thinking about doing this little thing, and I wonder if you would come and play for me. And when he told me what it was, I thought, how on earth are we going, especially the Berlioz one, how on earth is this going to work for accordion and piano? But of course, I should have had more faith, knowing that it was Wayne. He would make it work very well, as he did so beautifully.
You're quite right there. But let's go back. We're concentrating on Gordon Cree. Let's go back first of all. Where and when did you first tinkle the ivories of a piano, Gordon?
As long as I can remember, I suppose, would be the short answer to that. I had an aunt when I was very small who had a piano. She didn't play, but she had it in the house, and they just couldn't keep me off it. I think that they had to end up locking it at times when they wanted to watch something on the television. I just wouldn't leave it alone, and that's that. I started to pick out tunes and things, and that's really how my parents knew that I had, if not a talent, at least an interest. And then a little later on, perhaps when I was more 5 or 6 years old, we went for a weekend one September to Blackpool, and my parents took me into the Tower Ballroom at Blackpool. I was just absolutely bowled over by the organ there in the Tower Ballroom, and I decided then, it wasn't the piano then, I decided I wanted to learn the organ. I took rather an obsession and pestered the life out of my parents to have organ lessons. So I didn't actually go to the piano till I was in my early teens. I was an organist. I was sent for organ lessons when I was 7.
Yeah, and then in your teens you went for piano lessons.
Yes.
What type of music were you on then?
Well, as I say, I started learning the organ, and the teacher just took me through a course of books, so it was very mixed. By the time I went to secondary school, when I was 12, maybe 13, the piano teacher decided I should learn the piano, because I learned the organ in rather a straightforward way. I didn't learn to read bass clef or to read music for the left hand. It was all done with chords, which made it rather difficult to adapt to the piano, but I still say now I'm very glad I did learn that way, because it gave me a knowledge of how chords work. And if I'd gone the other way, very often people have learned the piano and learned to read every note, find it hard to improvise and vamp. So I'm glad I did learn it that way, and I picked up with some difficulty, but then after a point very quickly picked up reading bass clef and the piano, and I probably took to it quicker than I did initially to the organ.
And did you know at that point then that you wanted to make music your life?
Oh yeah, I never questioned it. From my sort of late childhood, I never questioned that. There was never any question of me doing anything else inside my own head. That's what I was going to do. And as I grew up, people said to me, he's going to be a music teacher, or you should be a music teacher. And without questioning that, I just decided, well, if everyone said that, if I wanted a career in music, that's what I had to be. And that became my sort of, I don't know if it was an ambition, but it's what it became in my own head, that's what I had to be. As it turned out, I never really became a music teacher, and looking back, I suppose I never really wanted to be one, but everyone told me that's what I was going to be, so that's what I set out to go and do.
So it was a natural progression to go to the RSAMD then?
I don't even think we had careers officers and things, but I don't even think as a young teenager I really considered there was any other way to make a living from music other than being a music teacher. So yes, I decided I was going to go to the academy, the RSAMD, and be a music teacher, which I did.
Was it mainly classical music, Gordon?
Yes, yeah. Well, it was mixed. Classical conservatoire then that branched into other things, but primarily it was classical music that you studied. Although I went to the academy when I auditioned to get in, I wasn't accepted as a pianist. I was accepted as a singer.
Huh?
They didn't want me as a pianist. I went and auditioned, and everyone had to sing, whether you could or not. They used to humiliate you into standing up and singing. And when my acceptance letter came through, they said, we'd very much like to accept you for the course, but it is our opinion that you should be studying as a first study singer and not a pianist. I've never been able to work out if it was because my singing was so good or because my piano playing was so bad. But
well, if one thing it opened the door for you, that's for sure.
It certainly did.
You will find out more shortly, Gordon, but your first choice of music, I'm delighted to see it's a track from Peggy O'Keefe.
Oh, yes.
When were you first aware of Peggy's music?
Well, I must have been about 10. When I was at primary school, my primary school teacher, my class teacher, was called Mrs. O'Keefe. And I had never heard the name before. That was the only person I knew in the world called O'Keefe. And we were sitting late one Friday night, my parents and I, there was something in the television. It may have been Burns Night or St Andrew's Night or something, I don't know. But there was a programme on the telly from Glasgow, and they said, we'll now have a feature number, and I can't even remember what it was, featuring on the piano Miss Peggy O'Keefe. And I thought, oh goodness, that's that name again. I didn't know there was another O'Keefe in the world. Where I lived, it was a very uncommon name. And I just remember being spellbound. And while she was playing, while I was spellbound listening, I remember my parents saying, oh goodness, remember her, wrongly saying, as everyone seems to, oh, remember she was in the 1 O'Clock Gang, which of course she never was, but the whole world seems to think she was. She gets quite flustered about that when people insist to her, even when she opposes the opinion that she was in the 1 O'Clock Gang. And she stuck in my head from then, and then it wasn't until 1995 when my father and I, my singing teacher at the academy was and still is the conductor of the Glasgow Phoenix Choir, and she asked us to go along to the concert. She got us tickets, and Peter Morrison was the guest with Peggy O'Keefe at the piano, who I wasn't expecting to see that night. And suddenly I thought, that's that lady from all those years ago who I loved so much in the television. And I met her that night at the sort of after concert drink, and I just thought her playing at the concert, I just thought was magical. I just thought it was wonderful. And she was such a wonderful person. And from then on, our paths started to cross slightly work-wise, and it became rather a sort of mother and son relationship when we loved each other dearly and got on so well, but when we were thrown together for more than about 3 days at a time, we started to beat each other over the head with chairs and things and fall out. We just became like two members of a family, really.
Yes, a lovely, lovely lady. What have you chosen to let us hear from Peggy?
I've chosen something that really is quite far removed from Take the Floor, but it just means Peggy to me, both style-wise and this song. When I first started to work as an orchestral conductor, I put together a concert with a big orchestra, and I got Peggy to play the piano. And I said, I can't really have you here, Peggy, and not get you to feature something, and I'd like you to play something. And this is a tune she chose to play, and I wrote the arrangement of it for her to play, and she brought the house down. It was essentially quite a straight concert, but Peggy being Peggy decided if she was going to be featured, she was going to play something quite swingy, and it's Please Don't Talk About Me When I'm Gone.
Peggy O'Keefe leading there. Please don't talk about me when I'm gone. And my guest, Gordon Cree. Peggy O'Keefe and piano. Gordon, what's so special about Peggy's music?
I think that's one of the most impossible things to put into words. I think I first started to admire Peggy's work mainly because she was just so polished and so wonderful at so many different styles. I don't think there are many working musicians in this country who just have quite such a command of all styles. I mean, Peggy could have been playing classical music with the SNO one night and in a jazz club somewhere with a trio the next night and playing for a Scottish singer the following day. She just, anything she was ever asked to do, she did just so perfectly and so stylistically, and that track we've just played now, that's one facet of Peggy. There is no one can swing like her. There's just a rhythm and a swing and a feel in that sort of music that's wonderful, and that carries over into all the other, whether she's playing a Scottish march or whether she's playing something gentle. There's just a feel and a magic in her touch that I think that's one of the most impossible things to put into words. But I think if you were to play me 10 unknown recordings of pianists, I could pick her out every time.
Ah, lovely,
magical.
Lovely. Peggy, if you're listening in tonight, regards from us. Well, we left you studying music at the RSAMD, and so
Quite
to the
a lot.
other things then, to Scottish music.
Yes,
what
of
was your
course.
introduction to that, and who did you perform with first?
Scottish music. Well, I think living in this country, you can't function as a musician really of all sorts without being asked to play Scottish music at times. And I think to begin with, my first real Scottish music that I started to play was when I started acting as accompanist quite frequently to the fiddler Karen Hunter.
Oh, yes.
Although she was a theatre act, really. In those days, she was doing an awful lot of corporate after-dinner stuff, and I played for her. And there was a lot of Scottish in her act, and from there I went on to record the first album with Roy Hendry and his band, the accordionist Roy Hendry. Mm-hmm. And I did a Take the Floor guest spot with him away back in the 1990s sometime. So that's how I get into that. And from there I started being asked by promoters and things to play for shows that included people like Jimmy Logan and Karen Hunter, whom I've mentioned, and Alexander Morrison, I think, was on the tenor. He was in the first Scottish bill that I ever played for in the 1990s. I never set out to really be a Scottish accompanist. I suppose I never became solely a Scottish accompanist, but I just think working in this country, it's inevitable that you gravitate toward it at some point.
Yeah, well, your next choice of music takes us to another friend of yours, Angela Morley, and this is on the art of arranging. So tell us about the track.
Angela Morley, of course, was a very well-known composer and arranger. She scored a lot of films, most notably really Watership Down. She and I never met. We were friends for so long. We never met. We communicated by telephone and by email, and she gifted me such a lot of her music to play. You know, she would send me things and say, next concert you're doing, please have, you know, when normally pieces of orchestral music, you need to pay quite a substantial sum of money to hire them from the arrangers or the composers. Angela was giving me these for free. She was so kind. She died very suddenly recently in America where she lived, but she was British, and she arranged for all the great artists of the day, Mel Tormé and Shirley Bassey. And as someone who arranges myself, it's just like Peggy over again, that touch of magic. When Angela wrote an arrangement, it was just so special and so unique. And this track I've chosen is the singer Rosemary Squires, who had so many arrangements done by Angela, with Angela's arrangement and Angela conducting the track But Not For Me by Gershwin.
But not for me. Our lucky stars above, but not for me. With love to lead the way, I found more clouds of gray than any Russian play could guarantee. was a fool to fall and get that way. Hey ho, alas, and also lack a day. Although I can dismiss the memory of his kiss, I guess he's not for me. Was a fool to fall and get that way. Hey ho, alas, and also lack a day. Although I can dismiss the memory of his kiss, I guess he's not for not for me.
Gershwin's But Not For Me, singer Rosemary Squires. You're listening to Take the Floor here on BBC Radio Scotland, and tonight you join me in the company of that great pianist and accompanist Gordon Cree. Gordon, I found myself there, not listening to Rosemary Squires, just the way that you've been speaking about the arrangement. I found myself listening to the arrangement.
I'm afraid I spend half my life doing that. Poor singers are neglected in my ear, really. I spend more time nowadays listening to arrangements and orchestrations than I do the soloist, really.
Okay then, what are the main qualities of good arrangement?
Well, I think capturing the mood of the piece is very important. It's all very well knowing all the instruments of the orchestra inside out, but you've also got to know the piece, and you've got to treat it with due care. I mean, that arrangement we've just heard, it's a very gentle song and a little bit sad, and as was Angela's way, everything she did was just so delicately handled, and I think that's very important. You know, I mean, it's all very well writing a clever arrangement, but a song like we've just heard would have been completely ruined by sort of a 76 trombones treatment. You've just got to get the mood and just getting the weight of the sound behind the singer just right, both for the song and for their voice. That track we just heard, that arrangement may have been less effective behind another singer who perhaps had a bigger, more heavy voice. You've got to know the piece you're arranging and the person you're arranging it for very closely.
Yeah. Is it something that you enjoy doing yourself? Do you enjoy the challenge of it?
Oh, very much. Although I'm a very selfish arranger. I like to choose myself which piece I'm going to arrange, and I like to choose the lineup of the instruments. It's why I put on so many orchestral concerts and things myself. I do enjoy arranging, and at one time I think I would have been very happy to earn my living, if possible, only from doing that. But so often, in order to earn a living, you've got to arrange the pieces that the people want, and so many people come to me, for example, if they're working on cruise liners, and ask me to arrange their whole act for the band in the ship, which is maybe only piano, bass and drums and a trumpet, a trombone and a saxophone, which I find a wee bit uninspiring, unless it's a particularly swingy rhythmic piece of music. That's very effective. But when people come and say, could you do me Loch Lomond for a 7-piece band, I really think at times that's much more difficult than if they asked you to score that for the BBC Symphony Orchestra, because of course you've got so many forces and sections of an orchestra that size to choose from. When you're working with smaller groups, that really is a challenge, and sometimes I find myself sitting scratching my head for 3 days before I even put pen to paper. Well, it's all done in the computer now.
Yeah. Back to accompanying then. Guide us through. You mentioned some of the top comedians there.
Oh, yeah.
Other top Scottish artists that you've enjoyed working with over the years?
Well, Moira, of course. 1999, Peggy O'Keefe phoned me up and she said, I haven't played for Moira for some time, and she's been on the phone, or an agent had been on the phone and asking me to go to Northern Ireland, to Belfast, to the wonderful new Waterfront Hall, and play for Moira. And at that time, I think Peggy's hip was bothering her before she had her operation at that time, and she said, I'm really not able to go, so I've asked the agent to phone you, and I think you should go and play for Moira, which made me a bit nervous, because I'd never met Moira. She'd always just been this sort of big star in the television. And so the agent Julie called me and said, we're doing this thing, would you please come to Ireland and play for Moira? So I thought, well, I might as well, nothing ventured. So I said, yes, of course I will, and spent the next week or so sort of biting my nails, thinking, oh goodness, I hope I do this all right. And then Moira phoned, and she was very charming on the phone, and she asked me to go up to the house and run over a few things. I think it was, I don't think there was any getting out of it for her by that time, but it was by way of something of an audition, I think, just to make sure I could do it all right. So I went up to her house that she had then in Glasgow, and I approached the door very nervously, and this very tall, elegant, pleasant-looking lady answered the front door and threw her arms round me and welcomed me in and handed me a cup of tea and a sandwich. And from that moment, I just thought, no, this is wonderful, and we've been great friends ever since. And she doesn't perform as much now as she used to, but most times she's performing, she still asks me to play for her, which I like very much.
Excellent. That's Moira Anderson we're speaking about. Well, you must have enjoyed playing for the likes of Moira and, of course, Peter Morrison. But let's go back to Moira now. Your next choice of music is from a BBC recording of Take the Floor a few years back from Perth Concert Hall, and it is yourself and Moira.
Yes, your 70th birthday performance, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
I should mention that, shouldn't I? That's very indiscreet of me.
I wouldn't think so. Everybody else knows it.
Yes, but it's impolite to mention.
Moira Anderson with My Ain Folk and The Road to the Isles.
Far frae my hame I wander, but still my thoughts return to my ain folk o'er yonder in the shieling by the burn. I see a cozy ingle and the mist up in the brae, and joy and sadness mingle as I list some old world lay. And it's so but I'm longing for my ain folk, though they be but lowly, fair and plain folk. I am flabbing on the sea, but my heart will ever be. There came in dear old Scotland way my ain folk. A far cruise pulling me away, and laughter puts the leap upon the lane. It's the blue islands from the skerries to the loos. We hammer honey taste upon each name. And Loch Amber I will go. By heaven tracks we heaven in the wilds. If it's thinking in your inner head, braggarts in my step, you've never smelt the tangle or the isles. Oh, the Falklands are putting love on me. I step away with my crummock to the
Yes, a wonderful musical partnership there. Moira Anderson with my guest Gordon Cree. Gordon, is there still plenty opportunity to accompany artists such as Moira?
Not now, no. There's plenty of opportunity to accompany singers, but you don't really have artists like Moira nowadays. I think Moira and Peter and their generation, they all belong to a time when entertainment of that sort was very much to the fore on television and things, and people became stars by working in that field and becoming well known in that field. There was the days of people starting at the bottom and working up and becoming well known because gradually people grow to love them seems to be slightly in the minority nowadays, I would think. I may be wrong, that's just how it appears to me.
Yeah, you still have many other projects to work on. So, for example,
yes.
Your fiancée is a singer.
Oh, very much so, yes. Cheryl Forbes, wonderful mezzo-soprano. We work together a lot. It has really made me knuckle down and start looking at classical accompaniment again, which has done me the world of good. So that there's lots on the go there with her operatic and recital performances and things. She very kindly always gets me to play, probably because I give her a discount because I know her, you know.
All success to the two of you. Let's move on to what has been the highlight of your career to date.
The highlight of my career, I'm going to be very naughty and say that the highlight of my career was actually just because I happened to be present at the highlight of someone else's career. We touched on my fiancée Cheryl Forbes, and last year a friend of hers was listening to her singing and said, you know, when you sing you sound very much at certain parts of your voice like the great American mezzo-soprano Marilyn Horne, who I suppose many people consider was the greatest mezzo-soprano in the world, and certainly one of the most influential American classical singers of the last century. I know her, he said. I could arrange for you to go and sing to her and have some coaching with her. And we just thought at the time, that's impossible. You know, I'm sure Marilyn Horne doesn't have the time to dedicate any time to us. However, he duly contacted Marilyn Horne, and we received a communication from Marilyn Horne that if we'd like to make arrangements to go to New York in January, she would be there at her apartment in New York, and she'd be delighted to see us and spend some time with us, or with Cheryl rather. I'm talking as if it was both of us. I only went really as the accompanist. So we went to New York and pitched up at this absolutely magnificent apartment building overlooking Central Park. And I had been a fan. I'd idolised Marilyn Horne since I was young. I think mainly because Joan Sutherland was such a favourite of mine, and those two were so sort of inseparable throughout their career. There's so many projects together. And I think all the way across in the plane and all the way to the apartment and even all the way up in the elevator, I was still saying to myself, this isn't going to happen. Something's going to happen here. This has all been one big hoax. And we rang the doorbell expecting a butler or a maid or something to open the door, and the door opened and there stood this tiny wee woman, barely 5 foot tall, with glasses on and her jeans and her comfortable shoes, and it was Marilyn Horne, just looking like any other American housewife, and she was just delightful and insisted in taking us out for dinner, and we spent 3 days, and we've been back since. Cheryl's been having coaching with her. She's really taken a great interest and is a great advocate of Cheryl's talent. But I just remember sitting on the sofa in that apartment, drinking a cup of tea, looking across the coffee table at Marlin Horn and out the window to Central Park. And I thought, do you know, if nothing else, all the training and everything that led to me at least being able to accompany a singer, this has really been worthwhile to be sitting here looking at one of my childhood idols over a cup of tea, and we still keep in touch with her. And I think just that first moment of being in the company of one of the world's greatest really had to be a highlight of my career, even if I hadn't got there under my own steam.
What a lovely story. Lovely. Gordon, thank you very much for joining.
Thank you for having me. It's been lovely.
And continue success with your different facets of your musical career.
Thank
you.
you.
Your final music choice takes us to your composing skills, in fact.
Oh, yes.
Tell me about it.
It's a very, very simple piece of music that, if I'm very honest, I've never thought very much of. When I was a student at the academy, we had to do composition, whether you had any aspirations in that department or not, and you had to submit a folio of a certain number of a certain style of pieces, and one of the things was take a poem and set it to music. And I think I was a terrible procrastinator. I never was very on time with things. If things had to be handed in at 3 o'clock on the Monday, I would be not going to bed on the Sunday night, doing everything at once. And I couldn't find a poem suitable. So I always remember I was sitting on the express bus from Glasgow to Kilmarnock going home the day before the last piece had to be submitted, and it just had to be a very short thing. So I scribbled out a little, I can't even call it lyrics or a poem, it was just a set of very, very corny lyrics. So I wrote those first, and then I wrote a chord sequence that I would like to put them to, and a melody came from that, and it became a song which I recorded myself singing and performed very much when I was performing. And as I mentioned before, my singing teacher was the conductor, still is, of the Glasgow Phoenix Choir, and she said, if you put that into 4 parts, we'll perform that with the choir. So I did change the key, put it up a bit, because I was a baritone, and in order to get it to sit properly, shoved it up a few keys, put it into 4 parts. The choir started to perform it and liked it so much that they included it on the CD. I still cringe slightly when I hear
Nice.
when I hear the words, and I mean it's a very basic, but they honoured me very much by recording it, and I chose it as one of the tracks as a tribute to my dear friends who have been so wonderful of the Glasgow Phoenix Choir, who have sort of always included me, and so they've asked me to be their guest for so many of their concerts, and so I always entertain them after their annual dinner. They're just a bunch of wonderful people. So this isn't so much the fact that it's my tune, but it's just a tribute and a tip of my hat to the very dedicated people of the Glasgow Phoenix Choir.
Gordon, thanks very much.
Thank you.
The Glasgow Phoenix Choir with Scotland, My Song Forever. And thanks again to Gordon Cree, our guest in more ways than one tonight. Meantime, on behalf of everyone here on Take the Floor, including producer Jennifer Cruikshank, this is Robbie Shepherd thanking you wherever you are for listening and hoping you can join us at the same time next week. We're looking for you, and all the best till then.